day 4 of Singletrack's 2025 Western States 100 pre-race coverage. Today we're talking with both Des Linden and Scott Jurek. A little bit of station ID, a quick thanks to our partners Norda, Goreware, NAC, and Raid for making all of this coverage possible. Des, great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
You're in Olympic Valley.
I know, it's exciting.
What's
Woke up in somewhere beautiful today. It was a long haul to get here, but I'm excited.
Cool. I think the first question I have for you, and we'll probably touch on a lot of topics today. I was reading a Runner's World article from December of last year, and you were noted as going independent, no longer having an agent. And this is a hot topic in our space right now. Like, a lot of people are contemplating, do I get representation? Do I not? Is there enough money in the sport for it to be possible? What do I do? You had an agent for 13 years. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about sort of like the pros and the cons and why you went the way you did?
It's a big question, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a place and time for all of it. Early in my career, like, I didn't know the ropes, didn't have the connections, didn't know what contracts could look like, should look like, how to be creative with them. And so I had Josh Cox to help me along the way. And he actually had represented himself. And I saw that he had done it and built, a pretty good brand for himself, and was like, hey, will you help me out, instead of going to one of the agents that kind of already existed. And I thought that that was a great way to make it more of a partnership and kind of learn from him and also help him build his agency. So yeah, I think that I was more hands-on with a lot of my contract discussions, negotiations, what they could look like, why you ask for certain things in certain ways, and just a huge learning process over 13 years. Now, could I have done what I'm doing now without that knowledge? Probably not. And then also without the achievements that I've had, probably not. So there's a time where you do need help, where you do need to learn. But I think for me, is like, if I wasn't learning to ultimately manage it myself, it would have been a miss, because it's also 15%, which is a lot of money.
What are some of the interesting things that you learn in the process? Like, when you go to represent yourself now, like, what are you equipped with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a lot of creativity in how you can create value for a brand. And there's obviously performances on the road, and that's the main thing. But there's a ton of other different ways that you can be talking about the brand, sharing what they're doing, and just getting eyeballs on products, right? And so having those different ways to be an athlete, but also an ambassador for a brand, I think has been huge. And so putting those in, and also like itemizing things, I think that that's kind of a big thing, where you're like, well, this is like, someone will come back to you, the sports marketing manager, like, this is what we have to offer you, and this is what we want in return. And you can kind of go through and be like, well, this is the value of social posts, this is the value of appearances, this is the value of a race where I finished top 3 here. And like, you can almost itemize those things and go like, that value is not quite right, but this one makes more sense, and here's why. So I think that that's something I've learned along the way.
Over the course of your career, have the contracts and the structure stayed relatively similar, or have they gotten more complex?
Definitely more complex. The Brooks one is like, it's just so many different things. It's like, obviously, road stuff. Now we've put in trail stuff, put in ultra stuff. I have a CRA, Chief Running Advisor role, that we've carved out. So I have that. I have a content kind of structure. So it's just like, every time I go and have a conversation with them, there's like, well, here's another layer, and here's the value, and like, how do we put that in? And they keep buying into it, which is cool. Nice. Like, they're like, oh, podcast? Yeah, let's do something for that. So I just feel like that's a great relationship, where you've proven that you can not just like come up with an idea, but that you can execute. And they go, oh, like, here's an idea. Let's give Des a chance to execute on it. So it's great.
What does Chief Running Advisor do?
Yeah, we came up with that a couple years back, and I think it's because I've pitched so many like just off the wall ideas, and they've gone pretty well. And so it's just having the ability to pitch things to Brooks. And then also with like the shoe development team, like, I worked really closely with them to help create Hyperion Elite 5 and like the principles of that, and like just making sure we were really pushing the super shoe side of things. And so like, how do you put that in an athlete contract? it's obviously valuable, but like, so it's finding those little things that I bring to the table just as an experienced athlete and even like a business mind. And so just carving out another way of being an ambassador for Brooks.
You talked a little bit about putting trail and ultra in your contract. So that must mean there's some foresight with the decision to make the pivot at some point. Do you have like a time and place in your mind of when that consideration began and how it began?
Yeah, I think honestly in 2020, I got a really great ultra trail bonus structure added on. Just like, hey, this is eventually where I'm going to go. And I ran the 50K world record, and that worked out really well. It's a little bit different this time, and it's very specific to where Brooks wants to see me and where we can have really good storytelling opportunities, because we don't know if my results in some of these races will be meaningful or impressive or just like, I'm just a participant. I don't know. So there's a little bit more to where I'm going to be. And yeah, that was fun to kind of create. But yeah, I think, that conversation started in 2020, and then it got a lot more serious after hanging up the flats on the Marathon Pro side. So I think that decision kind of allowed me to really take this stuff on in a big way. And like, it's not like I want to do a 100-miler, but I'm worried that it might impact my marathon, which it would, right? Like it has to. So now I can just focus on this without worrying about like giving up something else on the other side.
And I'm sure, I want to ask Scott this question too when we have him in studio, because, he's been with Brooks going on 2 decades now. He has the shoe, the Cascadia, that's kind of like got his fingerprints over it. When you reach a point with a brand where you have done so much for them, you've made so much impact, when it comes time to renegotiate, like if that happened at the end of last year, like, is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it indefinite? Like, how do you think about it? Like, do you want to be with Brooks for life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where my career is. I think chief running advisor is a big part of that because it's an ambassador role strictly. But we're still, doing things on the athlete side as well. But yeah, we kind of talk through the next couple years and what they look like. And again, it got complex with so many different parts to the contract, and we probably should split them up a little bit. But for the next like Olympic cycle, I'll be a Brooks athlete, and then there'll be more conversations. And I think if I'm still enjoying it, they'll find ways to allow me to work with them, which is cool.
What about the trail and ultra marathon side of the world intrigues you?
It's a new sport, and I think it's just like being a beginner again, which is really fun. I've just seen people have incredible performances. You get to run in amazing places. And I think you see a lot of road folks kind of like, just like, they're just running slow, but for a long time. And I don't believe that at all. I believe it's a truly different sport. And, I think learning that and having like unknowns and mistakes and all of those things is going to be fun. Like I sort of miss that. Like the marathon became something that was so routine that I'm excited for like just a completely different challenge.
Oh man, that's going to be so awkward if it actually is true, where it's just running slower, but for a longer amount of time.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Like, I know, I was listening to an interview you did with Fast People, and you were basically saying, look, like the acceleration that's happening in the marathon is insane. Like people are getting into that 210, 215 range. I'm sort of just like sitting in that like 224 to 227 window, and I'm just not sure it's worth my time investing it as much anymore. But there's like a crazy trade-off because yes, that's a reality, but also I have to imagine it's still financially lucrative to be in that space. Like you could probably just be in that space for quite a few more years. And so talk about like, that trade-off, like the money is there for you if you want it, but maybe you're just not as excited professionally about your potential there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I feel super satisfied there. And I think even with the money, like the effort you have to put in, it's like, does it warrant that paycheck, And I think it's good, but there's also other careers where you're like, I could make a lot more and not beat up my body, particularly if it's like not as fun as it used to be. And I think there's been this kind of interesting crossover point too, where it's like will you come be an ambassador, speak at this event, shake hands, and you make 3/4 of what you would do with a race going really well.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I mean, maybe I'll do more of these and a little less of those. But obviously, running is the main thing, and there's new challenges that I'm interested in. So that's, the passion side is still there, but I have to find different events.
And then also, like, this was surprising to me, that 2018 Boston Marathon win. You talk about maybe it's harder to, like, generate that fire for the sport after you've hit a goal.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that more?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was just top of mind for so long. I think, I debuted in 2007 and, like, really fell in love with the event, not knowing how good I could be, but I was like, I want to do something at this race and keep coming back. In 2011, I was second by 2 seconds, and that'll haunt you. 26.2, 2 seconds. Do the math on those, the money breakdown on that. That's painful. But yeah, and then it's like, for year after year, I kept going back and being 4th, 5th, in that range. And it became kind of a point where it's like, I've missed the window of opportunity, and now it's not motivating. It's just like crushing. So when I did get it done, it was like, I'm asking for no more. I feel very satisfied here. Everything else was gravy, which is great, but it's hard to get super excited to just have gravy. Right?
Yeah, that's a good
That
way
might
to
be
put
the
it.
quote.
It is hard to just have gravy.
Something that I thought was really impressive was, I think, a post you made around the time when you were announcing your retirement from the more professional marathon scene, and it was a log of, like, all your marathon times over the last, like, 20 years, which is so impressive. And what I thought was impeccable was just the variation, or really lack thereof. Like, you've been so consistent over time. Like, the times you're running 15 years ago, you're running today, which I think is every runner's dream, is to have longevity in that respect. How much longer do you see yourself running in the sport, like, as you transition to trail and ultra or other avenues in the sport that interests you? Do you see this being something that you're working towards in your 60s and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to change a lot. I think if you asked me 10 years ago, it's like, once I'm hanging up the flats from the marathon, like, I'm done and I'm going to go find, like, I'll be a paddleboarder or a cyclist or something. Like, I'm not into running for the sake of running. I think something after injury in 2012, actually, it was like I made myself fall in love with the process of running, which people talk about all the time, and it sounds cliche, but, like, I loved competing, and I loved racing, and I loved that side of it, but I didn't really like going for a run. Like, that was like a chore. And I've learned to like that. So I think I will be a lifelong runner, and that's going to change in terms of being a competitor and then scaling back from that. But I think I'll always, if the body will allow it, I'll be doing some type of running.
Huh. Do you feel like, at least for the next few years, you'll bring the same amount of focus and intensity to trails that you did to any given marathon block?
That's a great question. I feel like when I first decided to do this, it was like, nah, I'm kind of just here to participate and have some fun. But now it's kind of, I don't know, you get the bug and you start seeing people, like, out here at the race, and they're excited and they're amped up. How's the training going? And it makes me think that if I'm ever at a race like this, I'll probably want to be all in and do it in a big way. So yeah, I think that there's still a few more years of that, I hope. And trying to be strategic in who I'm partnering with, that if those goals are, something I think is achievable, I have support and the help to achieve them.
Yeah. You were at the Western States Memorial Day training camp runs. I saw some of your, like, interviews and some of the content that came out of that. It sounded like that was, I don't know if it was like an eye opener, but, like, good glimpse of what is to come this weekend. What were some main takeaways from that training camp?
I dodged a lot of it because I was just coming off Boston. It wasn't that fit, but, like, these guys are crazy. They run so many miles, and they're just, like, the atmosphere is so chill. But yeah, I think this was the first time I got on the trails, and I was like, oh, this is, like, runnable for me. Like I've been out to UTMB, I've run some in New Zealand. There's different places I've been where I'm like, this is, I can't, no. This is a different sport, and hiking, not for me. But I got out here and was like, okay, this section is runnable enough. Like it didn't do the first half, so I've heard that that's kind of a whole different beast. But it was enough to be like, well, maybe. But yeah, it was fun to watch, these guys learn the course and kind of talk strategy, and the camaraderie around it and all of that stuff it was just fun to get a glimpse of.
I was happy to see that you also get DOMs from downhill running, because I like to claim that I'm the queen of DOMs. My quads get beat up by every single downhill run I do. Talk a little bit about the impact and like how that felt any different from a
Do you
hard
have any
marathon.
tips for that? Like,
No.
can we strategize
We're still
here?
trying to figure that out.
Yeah. No, that was crazy. The section is very downhill, but I was like cooked for about a week. And I think it was Joe messaged me. He's like, 3 days is normal. Are you sure you're okay? Like, we're going to have to give you some protein after the race day to make sure you're actually recovering. So I'm a little I'm a lot more fit. Like I had a month more of training. That was like super downhill and the longest I'd run since Boston. So I just wasn't quite prepared. But I go from here, have a day at home, and then go over to the Swiss Alps. So hopefully my legs are not that terrible shape this time around. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of walking in the Swiss Alps.
As you're like charting a course in the sport, like I think you were talking about, maybe it was Charlie Lawrence who said, go do Tunnel Hill. You've got like Andy Cochran and Ruth and Magda. They've got all these big plans for you. As things develop, how important is it going to be for you to like, observe the sport and chart your own course versus like, I'm going to go do that on that recommendation, or like maybe I go here?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a mixed bag, because a lot of it's just going to be about having fun. I mean, maybe the schedule never really tees up to run Western States or, qualify for UTMB or whatever it may be. Like I have to be excited to go out the door and train for it. And so Tunnel Hill is on the list for this year. I'm going to that's the thing I plan on doing now.
Okay.
And then the one that I signed up for MDS, and everyone's like, that is so stupid. Like, why would you do that?
Marathon des Sables?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, because it just looks crazy and fun. And like, they got me on the marketing. They're like, this is the toughest race in the world. And I'm like, okay, sign me up. So some of it's not strategic at all. It's just like, this sounds fun to do. And a little bit of that is in partnership with Brooks, where it's like, what's the story there? Is there a story for us to tell? And are you going to be interested in like, is it going to like make people care, and so all of those things matter for storytelling as well. And so, there's some room to do that type of stuff.
Is it true that you're already writing off the big mountain stuff? Like, do you feel like that's not where you want to go?
Pretty much. I think here's the thing is I wouldn't even know what the big mountain stuff is. Like, what are you talking about? Educate me.
That's a great Long Run Archives question.
What is the big mountain stuff? Yeah, no, that's a great question.
I mean, do you throw UTMB in the mix there?
Those mountains seem big to me.
It is the rooftop of Europe.
Yeah. They feel pretty big when you're out there. Yeah. Speaking of that, you said you're going to the Swiss Alps very soon. Yeah. What does your summer look like beyond Western States pacing duties?
Yeah, so that trip, and then I'll come back and do some fishing in Wyoming, which has nothing to do with any of this, but it'll be fun. And then I'll turn around and get ready for Tunnel Hill for probably most of the fall. And I'm coaching an athlete for New York City Marathon, so I'll probably be out there for that, but just cheering. It should be fun.
I heard writing a book too.
I should be. I'm doing podcasts and YouTube series instead, but I don't think my editor will see this.
It'll be really interesting to kind of look back on like this next year or two in regards to like training and getting ready for some of these trail races versus the marathon, and whether you learn that you need an amount of structured versus not, because that's definitely been kind of a hot topic in the sport too, of like there's been such a wave of people getting ready for Western States with like going through every single workout and rep and everything with like a fine-tooth comb. Whereas that's just not been very trail in the past. And I think there's definitely still a ton of overlap in that Venn diagram of structured versus more unstructured training. and having success in the sport. I'm really curious to see what you end up finding for yourself.
Is this as much of a hot take as Pacers at Western State? How
I
do you
feel
feel about
like
that?
that one's been at the forefront since a few days ago.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the like training styles that have been leading up to this year's Western States has been one of the main talking points for the last few months, really.
It's gotten very sciencey and very structured and very, I don't know, I just think of the old Alberto Salazar, like finding every little micro edge, which is a slippery slope. Can be less fun, but the results are always, you're like, wow, that's incredible. I'm glad I got to see that. So.
Yeah, that's definitely where a lot of the talk is. It's like, if this is what it takes to be the best at something like Western States, like, do I want to do that because it involves a lot less like trail time and running in the mountains?
Yeah, I mean, I think if that were a question to me, no. I've already done like the high end, like I've gone all in, and even as a road runner, I wasn't really great at that because as soon as it stops being fun, I'm like, man, there are other jobs that probably pay a lot more.
What does Cara, your podcast co-host, think about this whole excursion?
I think she's surprised. I think she was like, when you're done with the marathon, you'll just like be a casual runner or like, take a couple months off and like do appearances and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm signing up for Tunnel Hill. Take a big swing at that. And she's like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I thought you were like done and like doing less. And that seems like a lot more. 2650, make it make sense. So I think she's surprised, but I think she's intrigued. I know she had some trail running and ultra stuff on her calendar early on before dystonia kind of really got turned up. And so she's dabbled with it and I think was probably humbled a little bit by it as well. Just I think she did Leadville Marathon and was like, dude, that's so hard. This is a different beast. And like, hearing all those stories are always good to just be like, yeah, it's a different game.
Yeah.
This reminds me, and if you're looking at any of your colleagues, like a Shalane, for example, are there any retirements from pro marathoning that you've admired from afar, or like thought to yourself, like, when it comes time for me, I want to do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Magda's like the number one person. I've always looked up to her career, how she managed and handled herself on the course, and then how she pivoted off the road into trail so well. Obviously, she did it at the highest level, so that's like, it becomes even more impressive. But the fact that she just was like, I want to try something new, went all in and, had fun doing it. Like, I always feel that with Magda is like, she's enjoying it. It's not a chore. It's not a job. It's just like, this is what I would be doing anyways. And yeah, that to me is like, I want to have fun with these experiences. That's the most important thing.
Something we talked about on our women's preview this week was the Masters record here at Western States on the women's side being threatened for another year here. So Esther Chilog is 40 years old. Ida Nilsson is 42. I think 42. So something that we pride ourselves in ultra running is you're not necessarily at the tip of your performance in your 20s. Like, that can continue beyond into your 40s. Does that excite you about entering this sport? Like, you could still be at your peak at the 50 plus mile distance for quite some time.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's kind of the reason to move up is like, maybe there's a little bit more time where I can be at the top, assuming I can transition into this pretty well. So there's a lot of question marks, but if it comes together, like, okay, there's like people you can compete with and they're doing it at this age. I think you're seeing it in the marathon as well, like people just having more longevity. And I don't know if that's like super shoes or better nutrition, better training, all those things coming together. But it's nice to see that it's doable. And I do feel like I'm on a time crunch of like, I'm learning this new thing and I'm pushing up against age and like, it's all going to end really quickly. But so there's a sense of urgency, but also I'm kind of giving myself the space to, it's okay if I'm not good at this. I can just admire those people.
I have a lot of miscellaneous questions that aren't necessarily trail related.
That sounds fun.
I'm like a late bloomer track and field fan.
Okay.
I became kind of a fan through Brett.
Yeah.
And I've been avidly following Grand Slam track. and just listened to a recent Coffee Club pod about sort of like how they've paused year one and they said look forward to year. Do you think Grand Slam is coming back?
I think it'll be indoors,
Oh.
and I think it'll be short-lived, particularly if it's indoors. That's my guess.
That's a fun take. Indoor Grand Slam.
And do you think if it fails, is that like a major setback for the professionalization of the sport, or is it just like, oh, we tried and someone will try again shortly after that, or does it reaffirm like the importance of Diamond League?
Yeah, that's a toughie. I think that we talked to Jeff Merrill, the Portland Track Club guy who puts on Portland Track Fest, about this on our podcast. And, he was like, anytime someone tries to set something up and puts in all the legwork and then it goes away, you just have this huge void, and like a lot of stuff that really lasts, like a Boston or a Western that people get excited about, is because there's tradition involved. And like you pull in community and you like create little stories around yearly events and like different races and how they played out. And, so when you have something big like Grand Slam and then it's just gone, not only do you lose something, but you lose the opportunity to build tradition. So I think that from that perspective, it would be bad, but I think it can't take away from people trying to do new things and take chances, right? Like, it's going to be something creative and innovative that gets people interested in track, because we can't keep doing the same thing and hope for different results, I don't think.
Yeah, it felt like they had some momentum going after Philly.
Yeah.
And now it feels like if there's a season 2 and I'm watching, it almost feels like if I decide to watch it, I'm watching it because I'm giving them a second chance.
Totally.
Which that's never like a great starting point.
Yeah, and it seemed like Philly was pretty successful, like when I tuned in.
The races,
Yeah.
the races were fun. Yeah. Like everyone did get a little better. I don't know. I think I would have just loved a little bit more clarity on the LA cancellation, because it was like very vague and like we accomplished what we wanted to this season. So we're done. I'm like, I don't know if I buy that, because
Yeah,
like
doesn't feel right.
it's like the regular NFL season was great. We don't need a Super Bowl.
So we've all, us three and Mike have been talking about all week, and this is kind of in homage to Grand Slam track, is the fashion component, how they did like the drip checks before each of the meets. And for next year in studio, when people like yourself come in, we'll do some sort of fashion judgment, and some analysis.
Nice.
Like, okay,
I'm glad you're not doing it this year.
No, yeah, we'll announce that like the full year
well, no,
out.
way in advance.
People
Yeah.
can start saving up for their Gucci suit.
Yeah,
People
we
show up
need
in
more
limos.
time.
But I thought that was brilliant. Like just stuff like that was a neat little.
Yeah.
Because like if you watch, for example, NBA basketball, not half the fun, but some of the fun is like in the pre-game when you see them walking into the arena,
Right.
and what's LeBron wearing, what's Caitlin Clark wearing. Like it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it makes brands think outside their comfort zones too. I think when it comes to like athleisure, they need to like step up their
yeah.
game a little bit.
Yeah, what would Brooks do, or what would Nike
I could
do?
see like a Brooks logo, like blazer,
There you go.
like a subtle
Collaborations,
logo.
man. You got to get the like luxury design collab with the shoe brand.
We need our chief running advisor on that.
Yeah. Brooks has been crushing it with some of the lifestyle stuff
they're
recently.
back in the game. It's
yeah,
fun to see.
it's been cool.
Speaking of clothing and attire, you'll be pacing. We didn't even mention this at all on this podcast. You will be pacing Joe McConaughy this weekend, who happens to be my mom's favorite runner.
Love
So
that.
she will be very happy to see that. She even asked me the other day. She goes, "What's his actual name?" And she's like, "It's not String Bean,
It's
right?"
String Bean. That's what's on his
I'm
birth
like, it's
certificate.
pretty much String Bean. Yeah. Well, what shoes are you going to be wearing out there? And are you going to have like an ultra specific race kit on, or how are you approaching that?
Yeah, I just packed a bunch of stuff. I don't even know. I should probably ask him what he's comfortable with. Like, or should we be matching or not? I'll have the Cascadia Elites, which have been great. And then I'm dabbling with this idea. I have a shirt that says it's a bad day to be a watermelon. But it's like fully cotton and it just seems like a bad idea, but I might have to do it for the
have to wear
bit.
that.
Like just for the
It'll be
bit, and then I
okay.
could change at some point. But I just think it would make Joe smile.
What section are you pacing him?
From Forest Hill to Rekicheki.
Oh,
I've learned the
cool.
names.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice, yeah.
Started. Oh,
Will you cross the river with him, or will you be stopping at the river?
that's a good question. I feel like we'll see how the body and the legs are doing. But I kind of feel like the river is gonna. You see people crossing; it's like up to here, which is like up to here on me. So I might take too long to help him when I get.
Yeah,
to
there's
it,
some
but-
like deep steps in there. I've crossed it now 3 times, and
Yeah.
if you miss a rock, you
You
dip
Yeah,
a
you
little
just
bit.
you
see
hold
bubbles.
hold on to the rope. That's really
Don't pull a Jim Walmsley and try to swim across.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah, he almost floated down.
Is it
Yeah.
moving pretty quick, or is it like?
Enough
be,
where
yeah.
if you let go of the rope and try and swim across, it'll take you down
Divert
a
you.
little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not
There's-
not a strong swimmer. So.
In 2016, when Jim Walmsley came into the sport, he really came in with kind of a bang, and he wire to wire led the race all the way to Highway 93. But part of his demise was when he got to the river, he felt like he didn't need to hold onto the rope or use the raft. He tried to swim across, and actually, like, there's footage of him falling downstream. And that
One
was
of his
kind of the
one of
beginning
his
the end.
bottles just dramatically floating away.
It's like a symbol of the rest of the day.
I mean, that, a
It's
little
getting
bit what
away
it
from
felt
me.
like, but yeah, that was like part 1 of 2 very dramatic instances of that race.
I like what you said, though, on the event side of things about how important tradition is and just something long-standing, and maybe that's part of what Grand Slam was kind of fighting up against. You just put on an event.
Yeah.
Save the 10,000.
Yeah.
And maybe that was one of the learnings, but what else did you learn in that process of building something from the ground up?
It's hard. It's a lot of work. Track is tough. I think we've seen like so many perfect like scenarios where everything is almost in a vacuum as much as it can be for a race, like pacers, best weather, let's move it a little bit later. Let's get the pacing lights. Let's get, there's all these different things. And to get athletes to show up, you have to like have all those things in place. And then on top of it, they have to be in the right place. Like, oh, I don't want to travel, or I got a little hamstring niggle last week, so forget it. There's like all these different things, but yeah, I think that's challenging with current athletes. But at the same time, it's also like if you want to qualify for something and you just need that opportunity, you'll find a way. And people who wanted to go to USA's were like, yeah, we'll figure it out and we'll get it done on the day. But yeah, I think it's the same thing as Grand Slam. I think for us is like finding our identity. Like, who are we for? What are we about? Why are we doing this? We talked about this a little on our last pod, but we felt like Grand Slam was trying to appease too many people, and like they pivoted along the way a lot. It was like, well, we're going to get rid of this event because it's been boring, or the distances are going to get cut in half, or we're actually not going to have we're called Grand Slam, but we're going to be a triple and cut out. You know what I mean? Like, so like, why all these? You're just kind of leaving your identity behind and like shifting as you go. So I think next year we will have a year 2 is like figuring out who we are and what we're doing this for, and then making sure we just really lean into that.
And are you worried about the 10,000? Is the 10,000 like imperiled?
I think it is, to be honest. I don't think there's too many opportunities. But then I look at the entries and I'm like, I'm not sure that people care. Like, maybe the athletes just don't really care about the event all that much either. Like, you can go figure it out on the roads and use those points and standards to get it done for the track. And like, maybe you just want your few track races in the 10, and that's fine. So
Yeah, that is tricky. We've kind of had like similar problems with the 50-mile distance.
Save the
And
50.
yeah, like the 50-mile distance is.
Well, Des is going to validate it.
Yes, thank you for
see.
running 50 miles at Tunnel Hill. But 50 miles has been a tricky one in the trail walk because like it's such an amazing distance. It's like it doesn't take forever, but it takes forever enough. But like in order to qualify for Western states, their minimum distance for their qualifiers is 100K.
Oh, so close.
So, yeah, so close. So then it's like all these amazing 50-mile races, all of a sudden, like you can't qualify
Yeah,
for Western
triple
states. And so it's like, oh, well, then if I'm already signed up, or if I'm already planning on 50 miles, I'll just go a dozen more. But
Right.
then there's like some iconic 50-mile races that are starting to shrink a little bit. And it's sad.
Yeah, and I feel like we talked about this yesterday with Topher Gaylord, but it was the retirement of the North Face 50-mile endurance events that used to occur here across the U.S. And I'm sure Magda ran one of those back in the day. But yeah, that was like the national championship pretty much for the 50-mile distance, and now it's not there anymore. But I do feel like Courtney Olson last year at Tunnel Hill, at least on the women's side, put the the 50-mile back on like focus.
Another really cool one, you might have already heard about it, the JFK 50.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list.
Oh yeah.
That's a cool because it's like 15 miles of the Appalachian Trail, and then you've got the C&O towpath for a marathon, and you've got just like the rolling farm roads,
Yeah, that's kind of nice.
and there's a live stream, which is cool.
Yeah, speaking of live stream, you've become quite the commentator in recent years. Can you talk a little bit about that involvement, how you pivoted there, and like opportunities of how that's helped grow the sport?
Yeah, I kind of just got dumped into it, which is really random. Like the marathon project during COVID, Josh Cox put on with Ben Rosario, and so he was like, "Would you want to, do the commentating?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I'm not doing anything. I'm not running it, so yeah. And enjoyed that. It was a pretty like low stress situation, and obviously the marathon, the pace is like you have time to take a breath and like look up your notes and all these different things. So I was like, "Oh, this is great." And then NBC reached out a couple months later and was like, you did a good job. Do you want to do this indoor track race, New Balance indoors? And I was like, sure, this was kind of fun and like totally different, like energy level. Yeah. And that was like trial by fire. And so I was a little less keen on it after that, but I was like, I'll keep trying it, and did a few Diamond Leagues, enjoyed it. But ultimately, like my time is better spent training and focusing on that stuff. So when marathon opportunities pop up here and there, I'm all for that. When track stuff pops up, I'm like, kind of busy.
It definitely does seem like a different beast between like the high pace of the track stuff versus just the natural commentary that could probably occur during a marathon commentating.
Yeah, I think the first race I did was marathon and then in 800 meters indoor. And I was like,
Chaos.
oh, okay. Yeah, this is a different animal.
Do you have a favorite race that you've called from the booth, or one that sticks out in your mind?
I think the Olympic Games in Paris for the women's marathon was really fun. And it was me, Paul Swangard, and Kara Goucher, which was really cool. It's just like a last minute add on. They're like, "Oh, you're in town. You want to jump in?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And that was fun to just kind of have like the podcast dynamic transfer to, an actual race. And Save the 10,000 was fun too, because it was just very untraditional. Like we were just like riffing, and then we had Clayton Young and Trey Hardy on the infield, and we can kind of bounce back and forth between them. So it was fun.
Oh, that is cool.
So it's out of shot, so viewers can't see it, but on the right side of our live stream, we've actually got the feed up for the Breaking 4 attempt that's going to happen at the top of the hour. For folks that are going to listen to this on the audio version, this is not going to age well, but maybe this is sort of an evergreen question. Do you like, and I don't know if you call it a stunt or just a project, but like when you look back at Breaking 2, we had Project Carbon X and Trail. Breaking 4. Do you like these sort of like staged events? Are they beyond entertainment value? Like, how do you interpret them?
Yeah, I mean, I think they can be interesting. They can be fun. They capture a new audience and attention and energy, but they can't be the main thing. I think they have to be like occasional attempts here and there when something really exciting is coming up. But I think that a lot of people, it's interesting because if she breaks 4, is that the new standard for women? And then, does everything have to be set up so that other women have an opportunity to crash this barrier? Like, how does it impact the sport afterwards is always interesting. So, I mean, I don't know. I think about Kipchoge, and the men got a lot faster. I think the pacing teams got a lot bigger. Yeah. So you see a little bit of it, but the times, they moved a little bit, but no one's breaking 2 yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I guess this is like a 2-part question, but if she does it, why will she do it? If she doesn't do it, why will it go that way?
What do you guys think?
Gosh, I mean, like if she does, like how will she do it? I mean,
yeah. What will as in like a post-effort analysis? What will we point to as like the reason why it happened, or the reason why it didn't happen?
I mean, they've really been advertising aerodynamics with like their little like bumpy suits and stuff, but I'm like, that can't be the only thing they're doing for aerodynamics. They got to cut more wind. The shoe element is super fascinating as well. But then it always kind of brings up, like, well, then how much of it was like
the
shoe runner versus the shoe? I mean, you definitely have to be, but it's like, oh, was this actually a 408 mile turned 359 due to tech? I mean, I guess that's part of the fun for why Nike's doing it, because they're like really wanting to push those limits. I mean, if it doesn't happen, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I would like for it to not happen, but for it to have been tried.
To
than
be
not try
entertaining
at
for
all.
like 98% of it.
Well, and it took Kipchoge 2 tries
Yeah.
to get it. So it's like maybe this first one is to figure out what they learn, how to fix for the next one.
I'll just say I've been occasionally looking over just to see the feed, and I kind of have the buildup seems pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
bringing in like the scientists, the product designers. Looks like Kipchoge is there on the infield doing some pre-race.
Well, they have the same coach, which I think is super fascinating.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah.
Like to have, I mean, 2 goats
Right.
coaching 2 goats, but in 2 completely different events.
Some
Like,
range, some coaching range.
that is some coaching range right there for Patrick Sang.
I'm excited to see like the clothing innovations that come out of this, just beyond the shoe, just the kit itself. I think there's a lot that can be learned from when brands do go all in on an event like this. And I think other brands then pick up on that. And I think when the best innovation happens, it's when there's multiple competitors working on the same thing or similar things and getting inspired by the others. So I think we could see some cool innovations
It's
after
true,
this.
because you got to partake in like the ultra running equivalent of this.
Further
like,
event.
Linden
Yeah.
was in the further event.
Oh,
where it was
that's
like
right. Okay.
6 days.
Yeah.
How far are you going to go? Except it was like very, very well supported.
Yes.
I guess the big difference maker was that like Lululemon made sure that everything that happened there was like record eligible.
Yes.
That's cool.
Like following all the rules. But then it was like within all that, it's like, how can we support the athletes as much as possible? We got a Scott seat.
All right, Des, you are officially on the Scott seat.
Right.
Your boy Scott Jurek asks, Des, coming from the road world and seeing more and more of trail, what is the most cringe thing about trail and ultra runners?
Too many accessories.
Oh.
Too many accessories. We've talked about this a little bit, Joe and I have like a 3 accessory max. So sunglasses, watch, and you could pick one other thing. But like you're already like if you have to wear a pack and then
Pack is an accessory.
yeah, and then arm sleeves, and then you see calf sleeves, and then gloves, watch, hat, sunglasses. Like there's
Fortunately,
they
there's no
start adding-
poles allowed at Western States.
Yeah, I know.
Poles are an accessory.
I've added those to my Swiss Alps kit. I'm like, I have so many accessories.
So many accessories.
So that's my take.
What's the movie with the flare and like got to have your 25
Oh,
pieces?
Jennifer Aniston. Gosh, why am I blanking? Oh, The Office Space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Office Space.
so trail running is basically the equivalent of that.
Maybe I'm gonna add a few to the max because you have to with the
Okay.
pack and the whole thing, and then maybe I'll just learn to like accessories.
Yeah. Not to mention like the cooling. The
Yeah,
ice.
like Western
Right.
States, there's so many accessories. Ice
It's a lot of
bandana.
stuff. Just seems for trail, kind of high maintenance, right?
Kind of.
Oh yeah, I would say Western States is like the peak of high maintenance trail running.
Totally.
From a runner
Oh,
and
yeah.
crew standpoint, which I'm really excited for you to see the like NASCAR pit stop
Yeah.
crews.
Yeah, this was the
throughout the
question I
race.
had was you're pacing, but are you also partaking in the crew responsibilities out on course as well?
I am. I believe so.
Nice.
I don't have a lot of answers for what my job is, but I'm gonna get them probably tomorrow.
Nice.
I've seen Joe race a couple times. I've raced him a couple times. That's like a loose term because I think he's crushed me. But he's actually always been one of the more lucid runners who's like been able to come into aid stations and like very well like articulate like I need this and this and this, which from a crew standpoint it's really nice. Like even some come in at Black Canyon 100K at the last crewable aid station,
Yeah.
and he like knew he was still outside of golden ticket position, knew that he needed to gain like 3 minutes, but he still sat down, like grabbed things, opened up the jar of pickle juice, drank all of it. That was incredible. Talking to his crew, like, I need these things, and then made his way out. I was like, wow, that's an amazing like amount of brain power to still have late into a
A
race.
good maturity too. That's got to
Yeah.
come from experience. But I've seen his spreadsheets. And I don't want to give away too much information, but they're like pretty detailed. Again, kind of high maintenance, but I'm here for it.
That's what this race.
So high maintenance on the spreadsheet, so you look low maintenance
Yes.
in the transition, right?
Yeah.
yeah, we train hard, win easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you had pacing responsibilities before, whether on the road and the trail? I think pacing responsibilities sound quite different than what pacing responsibilities look like on the road.
Yeah, I'm going to ask questions, as we meet with the crew this weekend and when I run with Joe later, in terms of what exactly he would need and like what's best. Like, should I be physically pacing him in front of him and like leading the way, or is that like one stepping and he's like, yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I can't see my foot, so we have to figure out our dynamic. I've done some pacing on the road, and literally like you're just out front, like hitting the split. And I think it's going to be very different.
And that's pacing from the start of the race.
Right.
It's like this is pacing from mid and
You never know what you're going to get when you pick up your pacer.
I'm so intrigued. Like I'm just a little like sad potato Joe being down in the dumps. I don't think I can handle that. So I have to cheer him up.
yeah.
With a bad day to be a watermelon shirt.
Yeah, totally.
I want to buy one of those. Okay, we've got 10 minutes until breaking 4. I promise we will not interrupt that. I've got at least one more question.
Okay.
And, one of the things that we do the week before Western and kind of before UTMB as well is like we kind of take stock of where the sport is at and what we see as a positive, negative influx in transition, et cetera. Some of the most interesting problems in our sport, it's like the drug testing void in some places, increasing commercialization, coherence of like where the elites go in race systems. On the road side of things, what are the most interesting problems to you?
I think anti-doping's just a big one. That's always going to be there, and it moves so quickly. Like you think you're caught up, and then it's just like you hear about new things. It's like that's insane. So I think that's always going to be a challenge. I think the growth of the sport, like in depth and like even just getting bibs and entries is becoming challenging, like for the masses. But I kind of look at the depth for the pros as well. And it's like, how hard is it going to be to get into these World Marathon major elite fields, And then you kind of start looking at the sponsorship side too. It's like, are these really great, like there's just been an influx of really great performances. Do they devalue the performance, or is more money going to come in? I guess there's so much growth, how do we take care of everyone? I think is an interesting question we're going to see.
There's been a ton of growth, like on the commercialization side, with the pro runner side of growing the sport, but then also the like running influencer side of growing the sport. Have you found that any increase of the like running influencer, like more non-competitive market, has that taken away at all from the opportunities on the pro side?
I don't know. I guess the question would have to go to like a sports marketing person and be like, how's this budget look? Like I think for Brooks, it seems that they're really investing in the pro side in a big way, but then there's also an influencer team and, like PR type stuff that has their own budget. Is it ultimately coming from the same bucket? Probably. And like, how are they deciding? We just haven't seen a step back from the pro side. Okay. But that doesn't mean that conversation hasn't happened where it's been like, well, here's the budget. How do we want to divvy it up? And pro gets the smaller slice of the pie. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting to watch because it's obviously going to impact, but I think pros have a lot of the skills and like tools to kind of dig into that, bucket as well of money.
Do you think that's a requirement as a professional athlete to also still have that non-running side of the contract?
I don't think it has to be. I think if you someone wants to just focus on your running and make performance the main thing, I totally appreciate that and respect that. And I think that you can make a really great career just doing that. I think that you have a lot more chances if you have the other side as well. Like you can have some bad races, you can have some off years, you can maybe dinged up and come back from an injury, and people will stick around a little bit longer if you have that other side as well as just the performance side.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat about like how involved you are in ultra trail right now, and like are you aware of like who is winning big races, who's like going to be competitive on the start line here at Western States and similar
The
races?
Cole Hawker of trail.
Yeah.
This is kind of bad, but I feel like I know the men really well, like probably just from hanging out with Joe. I remember watching Jim Walmsley, the record attempt that was a while back, and then obviously UTMB. So like, there's been certain people there that I've just know the names, and then less knowledgeable on the women's side, but learning and obviously probably more curious about that side. So I think that knowledge will go up quickly versus the men's side.
I have a quick question about your Japan excursions over the last
Yeah.
couple of years. I saw you did quite the adventure. I think it's with Tim Tollefson, Ruth Croft, and a couple.
Magda and Andy.
Magda and Andy, yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about? Because that seemed to be quite the eclectic bunch that kind of got formed to do a pretty sick route across Japan.
Yeah, I think Andy has ideas that are bad ideas that he paints as good ideas, and you're like, yeah, I'll do that. That sounds super fun. And so, yeah, he put the group together, and I was like, wow, these people all seem great. I'd never met Ruth, but I met Ruth in at UTMB. We went on a regular run that almost broke my spirit for the trail world. But I was like, okay, second chances. We'll do this
Regular
trip.
run.
Yeah, exactly. It's 15K. It was like 4.5 hours later. I hate you guys. But yeah, so we spent a fair number of days running Nakasendo Trail through Japan. Was mostly road. So that worked out well for me. And I was like, oh, sure, I'll go back for a second trip. And then we did a trip in New Zealand last year. That was pretty fun. But yeah, it's been great to get to know those folks. And like, I think that crew is like secretly putting together race plans for me. And then they like slowly like drop them in. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool.
Those are some good mentors,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Looking at something like the Western States course, what do you feel? What part like intimidates you more, the trail part or the distance part?
Both, but probably the trail part more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Which
curious
might
to-
be a mistake, but I'm arrogant about running distances. Trail, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious because it's like you've raced quite a few marathons. Like as you've done more and more of them, does the marathon, I guess, did the marathon ever feel long when you first started doing it? And like, does the marathon still feel long?
Yeah, I think that's been the big pivot is like the first couple years, it's like, well, obviously the first one, you're like, I don't know if I can even finish this. Like, I've only run 20 miles in training. Like, am I going to die at that point? Like, what's going to happen when I do this at pace? And then you start to figure it out and trust your training and realize what the training means. And then that kind of fear of the distance goes away. I think you can respect the distance, but not fear it once you've kind of done it a few times. And I think there's fear of the 100 miles and there's respect for the 100 miles. And hopefully, you can kind of dial down the fear as you learn and put in the training.
Well, Des, we really appreciate having you on the show. Excited that you're here to take part in, I think, maybe the biggest event on the North American trail scene. And just excited that you're going to be with us at least for the next few years. Thanks to Brett and Leah. And we've got 3 minutes until breaking 4. So maybe we close things down here and watch Faith hopefully break it.
Let's do it.
Sounds good.